welcome to Hearts and Stripes, your one-stop shop for all things military marriage. I hope our discussions and interviews equip you with the tools to start or grow a beautiful marriage as we address the benefits and challenges of marriage. I believe life's most precious moments are worth celebrating, so I'll help you design your marriage blueprint in alignment with your core values. Thank you for joining us, and remember to rate, subscribe, and review. Let's do this. Hello, and welcome to Hearts and Stripes podcast. This is your host, Bree Carroll, here for another Heart to Heart. So if you have been living under a rock, maybe you didn't realize that we are actually in the thick of it, counting down Military Marriage Day. We are at day 2 of the countdown to August the 14th, Military Marriage Day. How can you get plugged into the countdown? It is easy. Head to our Facebook page, Military Marriage Day on Facebook, and you can get plugged in and tune into all of the lives and giveaways that we have going on there. So Sunday, we started the countdown. We had some relaxation. We talked about reconnection. We talked about refreshing for Sunday. And we have Money Monday today. So you're going to want to catch the lives that are related to that. And then a full week of different themes, all with the common 2021 theme of connection that we will be talking about specifically for our service couples. Amazing giveaways, and you are not going to want to miss it. So head to militarymarriageday.com, check out the lineup to see everything we have planned for the week. It is not too late for you to RSVP and be entered to win some of these giveaways. So you're going to want to RSVP. And then before we start the MMD Summit, our 2-day staycation for you to invest in your relationship, you can still get those tickets while supplies last. No, it's not too late. You can get tickets all up until the last day, but don't wait till the last minute to get it because you don't want to forget. You really want to be intentional. That's what this holiday is all about, being intentional about strengthening your relationship. You can do all of that and more at militarymarriageday.com. So be sure that you head there now. So we are still in our replay series. I'm really excited about this one. It comes from the spouse angle. This is an interview that we did with them last year talking about Military Marriage Day 2020. So you get to hear some of the excitement from our inaugural celebration, if you will. So listen in to this replay from the spouse angle. You know, we love to collaborate here on this platform. So please follow that podcast. Check out all the great things that they have going on there. And I hope that you enjoy this episode of The Replay. As I walk through marriage as a military spouse, I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate. It is not easy, right? It's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are times when you are frustrated during a deployment, or you feel like if you have little people that you are a single mom and you maybe didn't sign up to be a single parent, right? When you got married. So there's all these different experiences that we walk through in our marriage.
You're listening to The Spouse Angle, a podcast breaking down the news for military spouses and their families. I'm your host, Natalie Gross, and this is episode 41. Move over National Donut Day. There's a new holiday in town, and it's all about celebrating military couples. If you're on social media at all, you may have seen all the posts and announcements about the inaugural Military Marriage Day, which just took place on August 14th. On today's show, you are going to get a behind-the-scenes look at what it's like to create a new holiday and why organizers thought it was important enough to celebrate military marriage in the first place. Military Marriage Day was the brainchild of Bree Carroll, who I am so excited to have on for you guys today. Bree is an Air Force spouse of 6 years, a mom of 3 military kids, a wedding and event planner, and host of the Hearts and Stripes podcast. She was also recently named the Armed Forces Insurance Air Force Spouse of the Year for 2020. So a woman of many talents. Bree, I'm so thankful that you came on the show. Did I miss anything in that intro that you want to add?
No, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on. You definitely covered all the things, hashtag all the things, right? So I am really excited to be here and kind of share a little bit about what we've been working on here recently, specifically Military Marriage Day.
let's start there. I'd love to hear more about that. So tell us about the inaugural military marriage day and how it went.
Sure. So I'll take you back a little bit. So, in receiving the title for the 2020 Armed Forces Insurance Air Force Spouse of the Year, I had some fantastic spouses and kind of mentors reach out and kind of ask me, like, what is my platform? What are some things I'm passionate about and really want to see happen in that year? And one of the three things was celebrating. And with being a wedding and event planner, I love a good party, a good time. And celebrations are something that's really important to me and always have been since I've been growing up. I like to make a big deal of people's birthdays and things. So, in thinking about celebrations, I was trying to figure out a way how to get people celebrating their marriages. And I had this crazy idea one day when I noticed, like, you know how you see the little funny, today is Taco Day, or today is National Milkshake Day, or, little
Yeah.
things like that. I was just like, why can't we have a holiday that celebrates marriage, and specifically military marriages? So I started doing some research and I bounced the idea off of some of my mentors and fellow people in the military spouse space, and to see, was this just a good idea to me, or is this something that other people would find value in? And what I ended up doing is I just did the homework of how to establish a holiday. And I can tell you the story about how we landed on the date. Really, I was talking with Corey Weathers, another. She was a military spouse of the year. She won the overall for her year. I believe that was 2015, and she is well known in the space of dealing with military marriages or helping couples in military marriages. And I was just chatting with her because, May is like military month. We have all types of great celebrations in May. And I was bouncing the idea off of her. And I was like, well, maybe we can put it at the end of May. And we're like, no, we don't want to compete with other holidays and things. And we put our heads together. We said, well, what's 6 months past, or in between, if you will, Valentine's Day? And that 6 month point, excuse me, is August the 14th. So that's how we got to figure out a day to kind of break up your year and different opportunities to focus on love in your marriage. And this past August 14th, which was just Friday, when based off of when we're recording and talking right now, was Military Marriage Day. And we had a fantastic time. We had a week's worth of activities that we went through. And really, they were opportunities for couples to engage. We got the entire military spouse and veteran owned business community involved in the celebration. They gave different giveaways and hosted different opportunities to get engaged with the couple. And that was how we counted down up to August the 14th. And then our finale celebration was the virtual celebration, which was presented by Armed Forces Insurance and First Command. And wow, I was just just blown away with the end product, because I love the fact that the virtual celebration, the heart of it, the anchor of it all, was really storytelling, and storytelling from different spouses and couples that were really transparent about the struggles and the difficulty that they have seen in their military marriage and what they did to make it work. So if anyone has missed any of this stuff, they can still go back and check out the replays and all the goodness that happened during that week. It's on our Facebook page, Military Marriage Day page on Facebook. So I was just really excited for everything that happened for that celebration. And I hope that couples that went through it and experienced it, or even that maybe missed it and want to catch up and see the replays, that they really gained something from it and found value as it strengthens their marriage.
Well, you talk about storytelling. I'm obviously a huge fan. It's what I do for a living. So I want to know more about your story. I imagine that this all is very personal to you as a military spouse. marriage isn't easy. Then, of course, you throw the challenges of military life on top of that, whether it's separation, isolation, etc. So I would just really love to know more about you, your military spouse journey, what you have experienced in your own marriage, and where your passion for strengthening military marriages really comes from.
Yeah, so um, the passion for it really comes down into the not so good parts of a person's story. So I always kind of have to reflect back to the fact that coming up, I had a lot of unhealthy relationships, and I kind of struggled. I stumbled through relationships that one was abusive or one was just demeaning, and I was talked down to a lot. And just seeing that pattern of going through unhealthy relationships was a testament to kind of how I valued myself in the positioning that I was putting myself in. And one of the things that I realized was kind of my defining moment is I was in a 2-bedroom apartment in Del Rio, Texas, and I was being strangled by a man that I thought that I would marry. And I can remember looking up at the ceiling, this popcorn ceiling on this beautiful Texas sunny day, and thinking to myself, how did I get here? Like what happened? Like how did I get to this point? And I remember, because I was a God girl, I remember being able to utter the words through being strangled and saying, I don't see God in you. And honestly, me being able to even say that, I was amazed, because he was just so much bigger than me, and I could barely breathe at the time. And it echoes back in my mind even now as I think about the things that I do. I was saying that I didn't see God in him, but really I didn't see God in the plans and how I was positioning myself. And it was really something that was spoken aloud for myself to remind myself. So I was able to get out of that unhealthy situation and started a journey of self-improvement, and through going through an encounter which the church that I was connected to at that time had us go through. It was like a spiritual retreat. I really started digging through all of the hurts and all of the letdowns and all of the expectations and things that I had to kind of heal from in my life personally, so that I could show up whole. And it's funny because as I went on that journey of self improvement, that is when I met the love of my life, my best friend, my husband, my now spouse. And it was while he was going through pilot training at Laughlin Air Force Base. And that's where we connected and met. And there was just so much power. We instantly connected. It was like, I like to tell people, on our second date we were talking about like credit scores and like some real serious life stuff that doesn't seem really romantic, but it was just like we just knew. And I always feel like, and that's why even though I talk a lot about marriage, I like to talk about what you do personally, your individual growth, and how you show up. Because had I not started that self care, going through just getting myself mentally well and valuing myself, then I never would have been able to receive the opportunity of being in a union, in a covenant with my husband. So that's why I get really passionate about seeing couples thrive, because I know the relationship that I have, the marriage that I have is special. It's unique. I've seen the bad stuff in other relationships, and I really am excited about being proactive about how we care for our relationship, how we continue to make it exciting, and just kind of how it will help us and propel us into doing some things that we want to do in the future. So that is really the story behind why I'm passionate about marriage. And then as I walk through marriage as a military spouse, I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate. It is not easy, right? It's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are times when you are frustrated during a deployment, or you feel like if you have little people that you are a single mom and you maybe didn't sign up to be a single parent, right? When you got married. So there's all these different experiences that we walk through in our marriage. And it is challenging, but it is so rewarding and worth it when you keep your mind focused on that end thing, that end goal, whatever it is that motivates you. And actually, during the storytelling in Military Marriage Day, we had Taya Kyle, of the what was the Chris Kyle Frog Foundation, is now the Taya and Chris Kyle Foundation. She spoke about how she was working through her marriage and she had some tough times, and she had an image in her mind about them growing old and it's Christmas, and you know, they were enjoying this time together, old and gray, and that was the thing that was keeping her propelling forward. And that's the same kind of thing that I want to motivate couples to do now. Go for that end game. You know, be intentional about working on your marriage, strengthening your marriage, finding ways to connect and grow together and build something that you're excited for and that leaves a legacy for your kids to, like, ooh, I can't wait to be married like mom and dad, or have something special like they had. You know, just have that vision in your mind that can propel you into whatever is next, whatever that next deployment is, whatever the next TDY is, whatever that next PCS, as I'm going through right now, is, but something that keeps your mind on that end game.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned deployments. You know, I've talked with a lot of spouses and veterans over the years who have just talked about how difficult that reintegration period can be
Mm-hmm.
after a service member comes back from a deployment. And of course, if they're dealing with PTSD or survivor's guilt or anything like that, sometimes that can even lead to certain behaviors that drive a wedge in a marriage as well. I would be curious to hear if any of that resonates with you or sort of what you've observed just generally in the military community.
Yeah, so in our just our military community, like we just talked about, like, military marriage in and of itself is just different from regular marriages. I take it a step further in saying every military marriage then is also very different depending on what branch you're serving in, whatever type of duty or type of service they're doing. it it yields different experiences. So I can say that, fortunately for us, our reintegration was not as hard as maybe it would be for some others. And I mean that from the perspective of, my husband is a pilot. He flies. We try to be very intentional to never make it feel like dad is completely gone as much as we can. You know, we still FaceTime and still try to ensure that he still feels very present in our family during that time. And so we never had any issues when it came to PTSD or really tough challenges with reintegration. A lot of it is scheduling, getting him on a routine, you know, getting him on the routine that we've kind of started with the family. But what I can see from other couples is they don't always have it as easy. There are some situations and some places that my husband may go, and other spouses, significant others may go, where they're unable to talk about what they've done, what they've seen, and it could be something that has really shaken them. And for those couples, I would offer to be proactive and ask for help before it is too late. It is not for the spouse to kind of have this burden of trying to figure it all out in their marriage by themselves with their spouse. We have some amazing clinicians and therapists and people who can walk them through that path of just better understanding and maybe some healing for the active duty member if they have been in situations of trauma. And I think that is probably more so the message that I'd like to encourage. I know a lot of times people kind of shy away from wanting to seek help, but um in our lives, in this military lifestyle, we cannot afford to not ask for help. I mean, that's why we have so many amazing resources now. And I guess one of the things that I would like to see more of is that we bridge the gap between those resources and the families who really need it, so that it's not too late when they're able to find what they need, or they're not just kind of blundering around because it's hit a breaking point. So yeah, reintegration, to answer your question, hasn't been as bad for us. However, it's still a challenge regardless of how the person serves or where they go. And it's definitely still something that we need to be mindful of in our military lives.
I wonder if there's been a particular, when you talk about military marriage being different from civilian marriages, if there's any particular thing like even the separations, we just touched on reintegration, but I'd be curious if there's like a challenge really that you guys have had to personally overcome.
I think more so for us, it has been separation is a huge one. I think we have gotten or found our little rhythm when it comes to separation, and maybe some other military marriage couples can kind of relate. It starts becoming your norm, so you start figuring out ways to make that work for you. And another thing that I would say would be just being successful or ambitious in our own individual ventures. I'm a huge proponent for finding fulfillment as an individual. So my husband loves what he does. He's wanted to do it since he was a child. And I never want to make him feel bad for being excited about going on a deployment to live out the mission that he's been training for or doing something that he's wanted to do all of his life. In the same way, he supports me in doing things in business and speaking to people now and serving in the way that I'm serving. So that has been a balance that we kind of had to find to see how we are individually strong and how we can better support each other as we move forward. One of the ways, for example, that I've gotten asked about previously, he went on a deployment and was very hesitant because my husband is very much so family centered. And he was hesitant to go on the deployment because I was pregnant at the time, and he wasn't sure if he'd be able to get home by the time our child was born. And in that situation, I just reassured him, like, we've got this, we're a team, you're going to do and go out and do what you have to do in that mission. And having that understanding and being kind of secure in our individual selves and how we are successful and can sustain our home and things, that just made it so much easier to walk through that time of a deployment where I was really like wearing all the hats and having a little one. And I'm so grateful for our community that is circled around us, from our squadrons, people who did meal trains, from our church family, and even our family who understood what we were going through as a military family in that time and were able to support us. So those are the challenges that kind of we've had to work through. And I guess the other one is just we all make mistakes, and just being very kind to one another and forgiving one another when it comes to accidents or mishaps and things like that. My husband he gets a gold star because he's always very caring when it comes to me not doing everything right. Like, we don't hold these unrealistic expectations for one another. We're going to make mistakes. We may say things that didn't come out right, or our tone is different since we come from very different backgrounds. So giving each other grace in that way has also been something that was really huge for us.
Yeah, I love that you've already started to give some advice on this episode. I was going to actually ask you that next, because you
Yeah.
recently posted something on your Instagram page that I love because I'm a huge Hamilton fan, but you posted some military marriage tips that you can learn from Hamilton.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I would love it if you could share those with listeners, as well as any other personal advice that you want to share from your own experiences. And I definitely want to highlight some of the positive side too, as you have already started to do.
Absolutely. So, what we did for Military Marriage Day, as we counted it down, I did a Hearts and Stripes podcast takeover. That's my podcast. We talk all about strengthening military marriage. And for that takeover in that day, we counted down 10 lessons that we can learn from Hamilton, because most people don't think about it, but Hamilton, Elizabeth and Alexander Hamilton, they are a military couple. So their military
Yeah.
marriage, we could learn a lot from them and from that musical, which we absolutely love. Like, we still listen to the soundtrack now.
Oh yeah, same.
Yeah. So some of the lessons and things that we shared kind of in that, and you can still go back to Military Marriage Day Facebook page and see kind of how we counted those down. But one of them was, for example, we talked about the song I'm Not Gonna Waste My Shot, and Alexander Hamilton was just very passionate about wanting to make a difference and being seen. And oftentimes he made a lot of mistakes in his life and in his marriage because he was so ambitious and so much so trying to run for and reach for this thing. And I think it takes us understanding that, as I mentioned, individually we need to feel fulfilled in what we're doing, and that's what he was chasing after, right? That fulfillment of making a mark and doing something big, because he was an orphan and people thought less than him, so he was trying to prove himself. And I think, as in a military spouse relationship, it's awesome that we are able to just say and show to one another, hey, I see you, I see that you're doing amazing things, and just being that positive voice that can kind of calm that raging inside of them, that's kind of saying like, oh, I gotta go after this next thing. Another lesson that we kind of talked about is the song that when that you hear throughout, is he ever satisfied, or will it be enough? And I think acknowledging where you are is a lesson in of itself. Appreciating what you have right around you. Like, I'll tell you, be completely transparent. We are in the middle of a PCS. So we are in our home in base housing. We don't have furniture. We don't have, all of our things. Our household goods have not gotten here yet. But I can tell you, I'll look around and that song echoes in my mind. It is enough. I'm happy to have
Mhm.
my kids running around and playing in this empty house. It is enough. I don't need a whole bunch of stuff or things that are, or activities that may be distractions. What we have right here in our home is enough, and that's a huge lesson that I think Hamilton kind of shows, as Alexander Hamilton continued to seek outside of his home that fulfillment and trying to find and be enough. So those are kind of two of the lessons that we break down from the musical Hamilton. There's so much more as far as like relationships and having people in your corner that support your relationship. And there's so many nuggets in that movie. And if you haven't watched Hamilton, take it from us. You should go see. You should go watch it.
Absolutely. Definitely worth a Disney Plus subscription for sure.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, going back to Military Marriage Day, I'm curious, like, how does one go about establishing a holiday? What's the process to even get started with that?
Sure. So there's a lot of different steps that you can take to establishing a holiday. There are several paying sites, like you can pay to be listed on different sites like National Today and calendar.com and all these other sites. But at the heart of it, really, for anyone who is interested in starting a holiday, it starts with you just establishing it. You have to have a written document, if you will, that says when it was established, who it was established for, the reasoning behind it, just a lot of the background information. It needs to be something that is Googleable, if you will. So having it on a site, it doesn't have to be a standalone site, but we did choose to make it a standalone site at militarymarriageday.com. And it just shows the history. From there, you can go through different processes of getting the word out about your holiday. So really, that's what we did in this first year. We notified a lot of the calendar sites that are used for like school calendars. And there's actually a publication, and I'll have to get you the link for it, that publishes it's a book that dates back 30-40 years, that publishes all of the holidays. They're very old school in how they publish, but you do fill out a registration form and submit that for the publication. And I'm excited because we will be in the 2021 publication, noted as a holiday. And that's just for a typical holiday. To be a national day or something that's recognized on a higher level, you can get your city, your state, or an act of legislation to be passed for the day to be recognized. Also, you can get a presidential proclamation, one of the next steps that we'll be going towards for Military Marriage Day. But those last couple steps that I mentioned, it just takes a little bit more time, which is fine because we're excited to celebrate year after year, and work towards becoming a national day. It's just with it being an election year and everybody's really busy with the pandemic and stuff, we weren't able to see that happen for us in the inaugural year. However, we are very hopeful that we'll see that for 2021.
Yeah. Well, besides getting it recognized as a national holiday, what is your ultimate vision for this? What do you hope Military Marriage Day will eventually become?
Oh, yes. Fantastic question. I can throw some vision out to your audience. And by all means, I would love to hear what people think for Military Marriage Day, because even as I dream up this holiday, it really wouldn't be fitting if it doesn't serve our military community well, right? So, the vision that we have for Military Marriage Day is that it turns into a festival. And when I mean festival, I love to think big, something where couples can come together almost like a retreat where they can enjoy maybe some performances, some different opportunities to get away and to connect and do the things that they love to do. We would love to have resources available to our couples where they can just plug in proactively as opposed to reactively. So that's getting a network of providers, clinicians, programs, the people who are really serving our military couples to help them better understand how to navigate their relationships. We want to make sure that they are integrated into this holiday as well. And we are hoping to actually put a resource guide on the Military Marriage Day website to kind of posture us to move in this direction. In addition to that, we'd love to have some courses that are related to Military Marriage Day that just gives couples that kind of running start. It lays a foundation for them to work on it every day, because although Military Marriage Day is August the 14th, every year, we don't want you to just wait till one day to work on your marriage and relationship. So we want to ensure that couples are equipped so that they can continue to grow their relationships and are able to identify areas where, yeah, we might need to talk through this a little more, right? Or we maybe didn't handle this as well. I think oftentimes when you are able to identify things early, they are so much better off and are able to resolve things that could grow and blow up to be this big ugly thing. It's when you catch those small things and you're able to talk through it in a way that works for the two of you, then that's where we're seeing more success. So the big end goal really is that we can see that decline in the number of divorces that are happening in our with our military couples. Not just active duty, we're also talking about those after they get out, because that's actually where the higher numbers are for our divorce rate. It's after they have left their commitment, and that goes back to they are missing that piece of where they used to get fulfilled. They used to be able to focus on that mission in that service, and now they're forced to kind of get refamiliar with each other and navigate this civilian life. And we really want to see that divorce rate go down. Another stat that MFAN shows is that domestic violence exists in our community, and that's another stat that we're hoping that Military Marriage Day can help decrease, and that we can help those couples who maybe are struggling in that area or find themselves in those unhealthy relationships, that they can find the resources that they need to value themselves enough to get out of those relationships.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought up that, domestic violence statistic. We did devote 2 episodes to that, episode 35 and 36 recently. If listeners want to go back and check those out, those are full of some resources for you and also some storytelling, as we talked about earlier, as a powerful narrative to hopefully affect some change in this. So, Bree, I'm so thankful for your work, and thank you so much for making time for this podcast in the midst of your move and celebrating this day and putting all that together. So, lastly, I just want to ask, where can listeners connect with you and your work online or social media?
Well, yes, thank you so much for having me. It has definitely been a pleasure. Thank you for what you do. Continue to tell stories because I really feel like that's how people can relate to one another, and can grow and can learn. And I love a good podcast. So thank you for all that you're doing. If people are interested in getting connected with me, they can find me on Instagram at B Carroll Events. I'm also B Carroll Events on Facebook and on the website bcarrollevents.com. If you are wanting to get plugged in with Military Marriage Day, find highlights or any of that goodness, you can also find it the website militarymarriageday.com, Military Marriage Day on Facebook, and Military Marriage Day on Instagram.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Spouse Angle. You can find all previous episodes and more military news content at thespouseangle.com. If you listen on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or elsewhere, please consider leaving us a rating or a review. And come follow us on social media as well. That's at Spouse Angle Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. That's it from me, everyone. Talk to you next week.
Thank you for tuning in. Remember to rate, subscribe, and review. This is Hearts and Stripes. We are the few, the proud, that aim high and are forged by love. Always ready, always there. We are Mill Marriage Strong.